Mic check. We're good. Good morning, MomoCon. How's everybody doing today? All right, I see we definitely have some anime fans. Do we have any Attack on Titan fans in the audience? What about Fire Emblem? Yeah. My Hero Academia? Black Butler? Yeah! All right, well, we have a wonderful guest joining us. He's one hell of a butler, Mr. J. Michael Tatum.
What?
That's just water, it's fine.
That's not mine. How y'all doing this morning on this lovely Sunday? We have another day off. Isn't that wonderful? Tomorrow is a sleep day. Yes. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How are you doing this morning?
I'm here. I'm alive.
That's better than the alternative. I'm very glad you're here.
It is. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So what we're going to do a little Q&A up here, and then we'll open it up to the audience about half an hour in, if that's
Perfect.
okay with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, so my first question. You recently voiced a character in Jedi Survivor, which came out, last month?
True, yeah.
What was it like finding out you were going to be part of the Star Wars universe?
Friggin' awesome. One of the writers for the game, Denny Holman, worked on the Borderlands franchise for Gearbox. So I knew him. And he had worked on Borderlands 3, also on the DLC Love, Guns, and Tentacles, which is one of my favorite Borderlands things I ever did. And he's just a lovely, lovely human being. He moved to LA about a year after I did. And we're like, Danny, oh my God. And he kind of told me off the record, he's like, I'm working on a really cool property. It's really awesome. And I was like, oh. And I knew it was Star Wars, but he didn't say, I just figured it out. And I guess about a year or so later, I just got called into a studio and I wasn't told what it was for. It was some code name because they don't ever tell us. And it was really, really hush-hush. They're like, yeah, would you like to come in for Space Battle? And you're going to be playing something. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't really know. I just kind of show up. I'm like a secret agent. I don't know what the assignment is until I show up. And then, they burn the message. But I got in there and I noticed it was Danny. Was one of the writers. Was one of the directors in the room, and I was like, Danny, is this? And he was like, it is. And I was like, it's so cool. I mean, I had never worked on a property that had a lore master in the booth or in the studio with you. And the Star Wars properties have lore master. That's the person there. They'll any change they make to a line, they'd be like, lore master, is that canon? And he's like, yes, it is. Or no, it's not. And it's super cool because you could ask any clarification for character choice or whatever. The lore master would be like, well, this, and they'll give you this little history, and it was so cool. I was like, it's like having your own personal Wikipedia hologram following you around going, actually, it's this. And you're like, it's this. And it was super cool. And it was one of the best acting experiences I've had in the booth because, man, when you're working with writers, when you're being directed by writers, no one wants you to win more than that writer because they just love watching their words come to life. And they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And they would want to read me in for stuff. There's other characters that I'm talking to, but they're not in the booth with me. I'm just kind of doing singular lines around their own dialogue. And the writers would be like, can I read you in? Can I be this other character? Can I be Turgle for a second? I was like, please be Turgle for me. And they'd be Turgle, and I'm like, and we'd have fun. It was super fun. It was a party. And then when the game came out, they sent me a lightsaber.
What color lightsaber?
They sent me a lightsaber.
Oh my gosh. What color? What color?
It's Cal's lightsaber, so it's that kind of
okay.
What color would you call that? Is it? It's not orange. It's not whatever.
It's not really red.
It's based on the Cal, the main characters, the playable characters. It is his lightsaber, and I was like, oh, super cool. Also, it's awesome that just about all my scenes are with the character named Turgle, who's played by Richard Horvitz, and I have loved Richard Horvitz for many, many years. He is amazing, but we have never worked together. Now we have. Ha. Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, it's all right.
So pretty cool. Pretty cool to be in the Star Wars universe. That's so awesome. So your character, Tenya, in My Hero Academia, he has the engine quirk. So what quirk would you want to have?
The sleep anywhere quirk.
Sleep anywhere quirk. You know, I'm so jealous of people that can sleep anywhere.
I can barely sleep anywhere. Like I have, like everything has to be just perfect for me to even get like 2 hours of sleep. So I don't know. I guess whatever Aizawa's sleep quirk is. I know that's not his quirk, but like I would take whatever just to be able to sleep like he does. But yeah, we get asked that question all the time, like, what would your quirk be? And I think my favorite answer, which I'm going to steal, comes from Brittany Karbowski when she said, I would love the ability to throw my farts. Like, and not like a ventriloquist can throw their voice, not like, you know, and like this, but more like, I'm going to fart, but I'm going to make it sound like you did it. And I'll be like, oh my God, you know, that's I don't know how that I would ever use that for good. But
I mean, she could use it to her advantage.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
so
you know,
there'd be some good.
Maybe there's a bad guy on stage, like, you know, at a rally or something, saying something awful, and you can embarrass them by being like, and then they just lose all power because the audience laments. That's a heroic move, I think. I would do that.
I love it.
Or someone being really mean, someone being a real Karen to someone in line, and you just kind of fart them out of the room. This would be great. The power of humiliation.
Perfect. I know you've mentioned, like, with Star Wars, it had, like, a code name, and I know you often probably don't know what you're auditioning for when you get auditions. How often do they actually tell you what you're auditioning for?
It's about 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah. Sometimes they'll tell you, you know, it's this, and here's the character design, and here's all the information, and they just make you sign a bunch of NDA waivers before they agree to let you audition. Or they're really, really, like, oddly like, we can't tell you what the character does, but he might do this. And it's all like, it's really funny because it's never that secretive. It's like I said earlier, it's like, would you like to audition for a really cool video game called Mystical Knights Space Battle? And I was like, what could that possibly be? It was funny. I'll tell this quick story about being in the Genshin Impact universe now. Which is super fun, right? I've only been in the trailer, but that character is like, I mean, come on, guys. I was like, yeah, that's me. But I didn't. When I got the audition, it was they sent it all out under code names and stuff, and didn't have the name of the character written. It was everything was under a pseudonym, but the lines, and I was like, cool, and I had no idea what I was reading for. And so, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks passed after I turned that audition in, and I thought, okay, cool, I'd forgotten about it, and then I get a call, and then like my agent's like, you're going to be in Genshin Impact, and I was like, oh, I didn't even audition for that. Oh my God, they just reached out to me because I, J. Michael Tatum, I went in with such an ego because I was like, they just asked me. Now, I didn't act like it. I wasn't arrogant. I wasn't like, thank you. About time. But I did go in with this sort of like, I'm here, they just love me, they really love me. And they had no idea who I was, you guys. They were like, anyway, let's play your audition. And I was like, yes. Oh, yes, I remember that now, perfect. And and it was a great session, but thinking, oh, they know me. They have no idea who I am. That's fine. But it was really funny, yeah. And they told me, we did the trailer, like, cool, trailer's gonna come out in a few weeks, but please don't, you can't, you're not allowed to officially announce that you're in it. Because that's just not how we're gonna do it, and we're gonna wait to make the announcements till later. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll forget anyway. So I have a terrible memory about these things. And then I was at a con. The trailer had come out, and a bunch of people were like, "There's no way that's not Tatum." And I was like, oh. And I had someone come up to my booth with a Pantaloon print that they wanted me to sign, and I was like, I can't sign this because I can neither confirm nor deny that I'm this character. And like 10 minutes later, I got an email from the studio going like, you can announce it now. And so I was like, person, come back. It is me, sorry. Oh my God, it's such a silly business sometimes. But yeah, it's super fun.
When it comes to NDAs, I know sometimes like you can't, like you were saying, you can't really confirm it. So what about when people like hear your voice in a trailer or in a game or something like, I know that's you. How do you handle that?
I just go, it does sound a lot like me. It's AI. No, it doesn't happen very often. It's funny. It's the only times I can remember it happening, because usually by the time something is out there, especially these days with how fast everything moves, by the time I've recorded it, I don't have time to like accidentally say I'm in it before it's actually out and it's announced, so I can be like, oh yeah, I mean there are a few things, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna say anything about that. And no one's heard it because nothing is out there until it's okay to announce, you know, so it's usually, I don't have to wait very long. But I remember when I auditioned for Black Butler 1,000 years ago, you know, my star was sort of rising at the time, so, you know, at cons, especially anime cons, people knew who I was. I'm like, whatever, and I had auditioned for Sebastian like the week prior. I'd gone to this con in Ohio. The week prior to going to this con, I had auditioned, and then I was kind of waiting to hear back. Am I going to be in it? I don't know. I had no idea. And then I had these two young women come up to me, like in the hallway. They were like, "Mr. Tatum," and I was like, "Yes, hi. How are you?" And they had a Black Butler wall scroll, and were like, "We'd like you to sign this," and I was like, okay, I'm not in it. It's not dubbed. And they're like, we're so sure that you're going to be in it that we want your signature. And I was like, okay. So somewhere out there is someone has a Black Butler wall scroll, like one of the original ones, with my signature and a giant question mark next to it. And within 5 minutes of doing that, I get a call from Colleen Klinkenbeard, the casting director. She's like, you're going to be Sebastian? I was like, how did they do that?
You met some time travelers.
True story. They were like, we are so sure it's going to be you and no one else. And I was like, I don't know, guys. It's really, because I really didn't think I was. At the time, I had no idea. I mean, I was just auditioning. I was auditioning with hundreds of other people. So I was like, there's no way. I might be in it as something, but Sebastian, oh, come on, I'm not going to be Sebastian. Oh, I'm Sebastian. That's cool. Wow. So funny. This is unrelated, but sort of related. I was at a Ren Fair years ago, and my friends decided to do a tarot reading with this wonderful little old woman who really looked the part. And I mean, she just looked like Baba Yaga, you know, she had the whole thing, and she had these cards, and she was really delightful. And, you know, this is no way she knew. There's just no way. And there wasn't, like, she didn't have a phone on her to be, like, looking stuff up while we were talking. And it was a delightful little, you know, your typical tarot session. Well, you know, in the future of this, that you'll meet the person who whatever. And then as we were done, she just had this look on her face. She's like, I'm sorry, can I ask you a very strange question? I'm just getting this weird vibe. Are you known for doing a weird, like, French accent? And sometimes a British one? And I was like, when am I going to die? Will I ever be rich? I was like, oh my God, she's real.
Love the story. Beautiful. So one question I often like to ask is who of your characters you would like to hang out with, but that's a little boring and oversaid. Who would you not want to spend time with that you voiced?
Skiyama from Tokyo Ghoul. No, I love him. I think he's awesome, but the pressure would be like, either he's going to eat me or he doesn't want to eat me. And either way, I'm like, why don't you want to eat me? Don't eat me, but why don't you want to eat me? Like, I can't win. I wouldn't want to hang out with, I would, oh God, how do I put this? I don't want to hang out with anyone from Attack on Titan because we're all going to die. I would hang out with most of my characters except the really, really gross ones that are like really vile, villainous, like fun to play, but like, no, they're awful human beings. I would never want to know them. And there's not been too many of those. Yeah, I can't think of any that I wouldn't want to hang out with. Be weird, though, if it's characters I've played, because then, like, I feel like the burden of conversation is entirely on me.
No, I know you have a theater background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you could take any of the shows that you've been in, turn it into a stage adaptation, what would you want it to be? Attack on Titan, the musical.
Attack on Titan, the musical.
That's my husband, by the way. Thank you.
I don't know. I feel like Elrond would make a really good musical.
That would be so cute. Yeah.
In fact, I think they might have turned it into one at some point. Yeah, isn't there one? Yeah, because they did that with Black Butler as well. That'd be fun. I'm trying to think of other shows. Yeah, like just like straight stage productions rather than musicals. And I'm trying to think. You guys remember Spice and Wolf? Does anyone know Spice and Wolf? Yeah. I love that show so much. In fact, let me plug this really quickly. Brina and I have reunited to do the audiobooks. So we're up to, I think, volume 3 or 4 now. It's been released on Audible. So check out Audible. It's Brina and I reading the stories. It's awesome. It's good because you get to hear us do imitations of each other. But it's really, really fun. Like, I don't usually do audiobooks, but they're far too time consuming for me to be able to. But when they reached out to Brina and I was like, yeah, I got to do this because we love Spice and Wolf. It was so much fun to play all those years ago. I mean, and Brina and I have been in tons and tons of stuff together, of course, like Black Butler. And you know, my first lead role she directed me in. So she's been my work wife for many years. And that is far and away our favorite couple we've ever played. And my best friend, Jamie Markey, wrote the scripts and directed the first season. So it has like, a lot of really fond memories of working on that show. I would love to play that like as a stage actor. That'd be really fun. Yeah, God, it's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful show.
It would make a really just pretty stage production as well.
It really would.
Just with the sets and the costuming, it'd be gorgeous.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of that sort of, it's got kind of a quiet ensemble to it. So it's not a huge cast. It would just be, you know, maybe 10 people or so here and there, depending on which story arc they're in. But that would be so much fun to do on stage. And I think it would make a really good stage production because it's a very talky show. Mm-hmm. It's very character-driven, very dialogue-driven. And that's what you need in a stage play, I feel. So that would be my ideal. Spice and Wolf. Spice and Wolf, the stage play.
Perfect. Now, you mentioned Jamie. You two have a podcast that you do together.
We don't do it anymore.
Gotcha.
Sadly, we don't have time. Though we might come back every now and again and do like a reunion episode, you know, like a long one when we have the time. But yeah, Ghoul Intentions. We started doing it, I guess, about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was pre-pandemic, and Jamie and I have known each other for almost 20 years now. She's been one of my best friends my best friend for years and years and years. And we immediately, we both love all things spooky and paranormal and unexplained. And like everyone knew it was kind of an unspoken rule that if you hung out with us, like we were going to get you to tell us a ghost story at some point. We'd drag it out of you, because even people that are like, no, nothing really spooky's ever happened. I'm like, are you sure? And then we'd interrogate them, and they were like, see, that's a spooky thing. You just didn't remember. And they're like, yeah. Be surprised how often you hear people go, no, I don't really believe in ghosts, but that was that one time that my house was haunted by a poltergeist for about 4 years. And you're like, go on. So we love that kind of stuff, and we decided one day, like, we should just do this as a podcast. And so we would do a lot of research with help from some of our mods, and it was a great little family that we had there for a while, and it was super, super cool. We have something like 200 episodes. And the concept is, if you're familiar with like the classic My Favorite Murder, where it's like two friends getting together and talking and being like, oh, and by the way, true crime, that's kind of what we do. Like the idea was we'd sit down, pour ourselves a couple of Moscow Mules, get a little tipsy, and then try to scare the hell out of each other with the stories we had individually researched for that week's episode. And it was really cool. Jamie would keep a little running tally of the number of times I would make her gasp in an episode. And she's like, oh, that's 5. So yeah, we really miss doing it. We had so much fun. It's just now we live in different states, and she's busy writing for Gearbox these days, which is a full-time job, and I'm busy in LA doing whatever the hell it is I do. And so we just don't have the time to do the kind of research we like to do before an episode, sadly. I mean, we could get together and chat all the time and do, but we stopped doing it because we didn't have the time to produce really good episodes anymore. And rather than just like phone it in, we'd rather stop while we were ahead. So we might come back now and again to do like a little reunion episode when we've had the time to do like a good several weeks worth of research into the topic we're talking about. But only then. It's quality over quantity.
Good plan. So in all the years that you've been acting, was there ever like a production you were part of that just really solidified your love of acting? Because it's easy just to do a few shows and be like, you know what, this isn't for me. What like really made you fall in love with it?
My first experience on stage made me fall in love with it. So I'll tell the story. As a child, I had a very, very debilitating speech impediment. I was a stutterer, very bad stutterer, so much so that I rarely spoke. And I share that in common with several actors that are well known. Alan Rickman, may he rest in peace, is one of them. James Earl Jones had a stutter when he was a child. So, you know, I'm in good company, I guess. But I was very self-conscious to speak when I was a kid, and so I rarely did. And I had speech therapy with this lovely lady that had ties to the theater, and I had a really good memory. Always have, I suppose. So we discovered that if I could learn a bit of dialogue or anything I read and memorized, I could recite pretty much verbatim, and the stutter would more or less disappear. So she was like, you need to get on stage. And I was like, what's that? And she had ties to a children's theater group in Dallas. They weren't just in Dallas, but that's where they were at the time, and they were doing a production of The Velveteen Rabbit, a little children's story. It's a beautiful little story, and they wanted it to be all child actors. So, they had a bunch of us little kids come and audition, and I got the part of the hobby horse, or the rocking horse, who's very wise and who has several monologues. I think the only character that really monologues. And because I had a good memory for monologuing, I did it, and so I got out on stage for the first time, and I had never been so validated in my life, nor since, really. It was the best experience I've ever had. It's getting up on stage, and someone who was absolutely terrified to speak because I was always being judged for how it sounded, now was like, just had the whole audience being like, oh my God, this is great. And I was like, so I literally found my voice through theater. And so my first experience on stage is what made me go, oh, I'm an actor.
That's so sweet. Yeah. I love that so much.
Thank you. I was also the tall kid, so it was natural that I would play the rocking horse. It's like, oh, you fit in the costume. So.
Nice. Now, you've played a few roles in Pokemon over the years. If you could have your own Pokemon, what would it be?
I do have my own Pokemon, 2 of them. They're French bulldogs, and they're just like Pokemon. They make repetitive noises, and they do have the ability to throw their farts. Was that me? Nope, that was my dog. I'd want one that looked like a French bulldog, and it would just fight you by pouting at you, like that's what they do. There'd be no violence involved. It would just be like, because that's what they do when they want something. Especially my older Frenchie, he's learned to like just look at you and just pout at you. He has a very particular way to like sit, and if he wants to go outside, he won't sit next to the door and look at you like some Frenchies do. Like, hey, Dad, get a clue. It's more like he'll be like, and I'm like, do you want to go outside? And I think, okay, and they open the door and he just lightens up. I'm like, okay. So he's got the power of the pout. The other one's far pushier. The other ones that will like tap you and be like, hey, what do you want? I don't know.
Sounds like my cat. Yeah. Does the same thing. Yeah. Now, used to, when it came to dubs, we had to wait a long time for the dub to come out of the sub, but now there's simul-dubs? How does that process work?
I don't know. I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's some kind of weird timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly thing. So I've worked in the business as a director, a writer, as a producer, and also obviously as an actor, and it was interesting, but I'll just give you an idea of how quickly things changed. When the simuldub process came about, they tried it out, Funimation, at the time Funimation, now it's Crunchyroll, and Funimation kind of came to all of us veteran actors that were kind of in their veteran pool and to be like, hey, would you guys be interested in this process? Like, we're going to try to do a thing where we take this, just one show out of the, say, 10 or 15 they were recording that season. They're like, we're going to do one of these shows like almost in real time. Like, we're going to like do it, and the dub's going to come out about the same day or within a few days of the Japanese release. And but it means that if you get a part, you're going to have to sign off and be available to record on a moment's notice, because we're only going to have about 4 days to record everybody. So we have to know that you're going to be in town. Like, you can't just leave for a week because we may need you. And so if you're going to be in town for the next 12 weeks and you want to work, but they also, like, we don't know what your line count's going to be. So, you might have 4 hours worth of recording one week and the next have 5 minutes, because you might have no lines in episode 2 and then 1,000 lines in episode 4. So it was a weird thing, and a bunch of us said, yeah, let's try it out. It was really interesting and kind of cool. The idea was that we could put this stuff out around the same time, so fans didn't have to wait anymore. And there was also less comparison to the Japanese seiyuu, which I thought freed us up to be a little more creative, because that's what we very much lived in the shadow of the Japanese production, as well we should. But people tended to be like, well, yeah, the seiyuu was better. And I'm like, well, of course you think the seiyuu was better. Like, you watched it first, and you're always going to be loyal to what you see first. That's just how it is. That's why the book is always better than the movie. They're completely different medium, and it's not necessarily fair to judge them, I think. But you're gonna have a more profound relationship with the thing that's been with you longer. And so as actors, we're like, yeah, we gotta, it kind of sucks that we're compared to the seiyuu all the time, because you want to do your own thing. So it was kind of nice to be like, cool, we can all be a family and come out at the same time, and we share a role. And it felt more, I don't know, I just really liked the idea of it. But the reality was pretty grueling, especially as a writer. So in the old days, as a writer, we would have access. We wouldn't start dubbing or start writing until the entire season was done in Japan, and then they would send us over all the translations and all the M&E, all the video. So as writers, we had the opportunity to sit down with the entire show before we started adapting it into English to kind of get an idea of like what shape the story was, how the arc followed, what the characters did from point A to point B. And we also had like a week, sometimes 2 weeks, to write a 25-minute episode, which was nice. It was nice to have that time. And it in those days, especially when you're starting out, it takes that long to write an episode that short because it's very technical and very difficult to get your head around. But once all of us had done it for 10, 15 years, and they were like, hey, Simuldubs, so hey, writers that are used to having 2 weeks to write a script, how do you feel about writing an episode in 48 hours? We also have no idea what's happening in episode 2 yet because that's still being produced in Japan. So good luck. And you run into all sorts of strange problems because of the language barrier. For example, the first simuldub I worked on as a writer was this beautiful little show called Laughing Under the Clouds, and we made a very significant error. It wasn't an error so much as it was just an oversight that happens when you work this quickly. So there was a concept being spoken about by the main characters in the first several episodes. It was they kept referring to this heirloom sword that was going to show up at one point. It was clearly a big, plot point. And so it was like, oh yeah, the sword, the heirloom sword, the heirloom sword. It was definitely what was driving the character. And then we get to it, and it's two swords. Like 4 or 5 episodes in, it's clearly two swords, but there was no way of knowing that because unlike English, Japanese does not distinguish between singular and plural tenses. You have to completely infer from context, and we didn't have that context. So it's like we had to go back and be like, well, we'll fix that for the DVD release. And it was a learning process, so it was really grueling, but fun at the same time because it was like, okay, I can sit down and write a script, but I would just have to chain myself to a desk for 48 hours. And drink a lot of coffee and get these scripts out once a week. Once a week, you'd have to set aside 2 days where like I can't come in to record, I can't do anything, I am at home writing this episode. And we all were like that. So there were some advantages to it and it was fun, but it became a bit of a grindhouse. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about it anymore. Because now that I've worked on video games and other media more extensively and I see like there's just a little more breadth of time to work on stuff, I feel a little like I have more of a connection to those things than I do the stuff that I'm like, oh, can you just be here for 15 minutes? Cool, thanks, bye. It's like taking a ghost. So to give you an example, I did a ghost tour once, a walking ghost tour and then a driving ghost tour in Key West, which is a very, very haunted city. I love ghost tours, you guys, spoilers. And the walking tour was great because it was slow. It's like 3 hours, you walked around, you got to touch the buildings and point, and there you're standing right there and look around, and, ooh, do you feel that, do you feel that? Do you feel the cold chill, whatever? And then there was a really cool bus tour, and the bus looks really great. It like looks like something from the Addams Family, but it's like, and yes, we're driving by this haunted house now. It's like, that's... No, I much prefer the walking tour. So that's kind of how I feel about simuldubs. It's really cool that stuff gets out there quickly so the fans don't have to wait so long for dubs. And it has, I think, elevated dubs to be taken more seriously because fans are likely to encounter it at the same time they encounter the Japanese. So I think they get a fairer hearing. But man, the realities of creating them are pretty grueling for the crew because it's such a breakneck pace, and I don't like going fast. I know I play Tenya Ida, but I like taking my time. But yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring the room down.
That's all right. So having to wear all those hats and as active as you are with everything, I know it's impossible to do this completely, but how do you avoid burnout or at least keep it to a minimum?
Yeah, the only way to avoid burnout, the only way to avoid burnout, in my experience, is to first have it and realize what it feels like. Because you don't always, I've never recognized burnout until I'm in it. And I'm like, oh, this is burnout. This is why I can't get out of bed right now. I'll think it's something else, and you have to realize, okay, how do I guard against this in the future? Because now I know what it looks like. But burnout is real for everybody in any position, in any job, I think. And it's important, I think, as a culture that we recognize that we need to just stop. Work fewer hours a week and maybe be paid fairly. Like everybody.
Imagine that.
So that you can take time, There's no reason you shouldn't be able to afford an apartment if you're working a job. I mean, it's just not. It doesn't matter. There's no reason. and I feel that way as an actor. You know, as an actor, you know, we get paid decent money, but it's an hourly rate, and if the hours aren't good, like, cool, it sounds great on paper, and you're like, awesome, I'm getting paid $100 an hour, but you only need me for 2 hours this month. Awesome. You know, it doesn't look. You know, it's hard to rely on as an income because it's so sporadic. And so I don't know. I think burnout is very real, and also it's not just in acting and the creative arts in general. I think everywhere we're a weird culture here in America. I think where we pride ourselves on burnout. I mean, every time you talk to somebody, they're like, "What do you know? Oh, I'm super busy," and it's like you feel weird if you're not busy, like you're being judged. Like, well, no, you know, I like so when people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, nothing. How are you? I've learned to take pride in being very boring because I'm like, you know, I work and I like to work and stuff like that, and sometimes I am very busy, but I try not to put that front and center when I'm talking to people about, you know, what's going on in your life. I'm like, you know, whatever, it's this, because I think we put too much emphasis on working. And I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of it. I like to work, but I don't like it to be my whole life or my whole personality. I think work is... Right. Oh, dead battery. We can share.
Here we go. 2 hours of sleep should not be a badge of honor, I guess.
No. Oh my God. Yeah. It really shouldn't be, and I don't like it. But that's my own opinion. I'm old now. I'm 47, and I'm at that stage where I'm like, can I stop? Can I be semi-retired, please? Because there's so much you miss, you know, when you're working. And there's so much you miss, so many connections you miss, so many relationships and just experiences you don't get to have because you're kind of shoring up your time. And it doesn't work like that. I think everyone works, especially when you're young. I know I did this, and I think everyone does naturally. You think, okay, you know, the whole phrase, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." You kind of extend that to like, oh, you know, I'll do all the fun stuff when I have all the money. You're never going to get all the money. It doesn't work like that because they keep raising prices on everything. So you're working your ass off to save up money, and the money just keeps, and your savings keep disappearing because they keep coming for it. And it's like, how do we work with that? Because people just need to we need the freedom to have a life that's fulfilling, and it's hard to do that when you're constantly working to try to have this and pushing off into some weird future date that's unspecified of like, I'll start living my life then. And I'm like, no, you gotta try to live your life now, or like something needs to change in our culture so that we can. But sorry, I didn't mean to get on an apple box about it. But like, I've worked very hard for a very long time, and I've burned out in my career multiple times. And my husband, who I love very much, is a very hard worker, and he goes through burnout. And I have to be like, babe, this is what it is. I'm telling you, you're gonna burn out. He's like, no. Everyone comes into the burnout phase thinking, I'll be the one who makes it through. Like, no, you won't. It's gonna suck, and you're gonna hate it, and it's gonna change your relationship to what you loved, because now it's killing you. And we should never be put in that position for anything, especially not money. Money is so boring, you guys. It's so boring. We're all scrambling after it, of course, because we have to. But man, it just sucks that we care so much about it because everything's so expensive. And it's like, man, if you're working hard, you're usually working hard for someone else who isn't. And that just, it's not okay. Not okay, I say. Brah, brah. I'd like to announce my presidential bid for 2039. Hell no. You talk about burnout? My running mate's just going to be a stanchion of Sebastian. That's true, I would. I mean, that'd be great. Actually, can he be president and I'll be vice? I like that idea better. Like, I just have a French bulldog on stage and his whole address is... Landslide victory. Oh, right.
Well, I think my mic died at the perfect time. No, this is great because we can go ahead and do the audience Q&A.
Yeah, okay, I like this idea. Let's do it.
Tay's going to be helping you guys out. You're going to practice asking her the question first. Let's stick with one question at a time. If you have 2 questions, just get back in line, and then you can ask the next one. You guys can go ahead and line up there at the center. Mike, if you have any questions.
Yes. I love it. Yes. See the lovely lady first to help you kind of guide you with your questions. She's your coach. Oh, more batteries. I wore it out. Wasn't even my mic, and I wore it out for you.
Skill.
I'm actually going to take my coat off because it's a little too.
I got it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, there we go. This is working now.
I was just wondering, out of all the characters that you voiced, which one is your favorite?
It's so tough to pick a favorite because they're all my babies, and they're all me. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
The secret to acting is to realize that there is no such thing as character, as far as an actor's concerned. Character is what the audience sees, and that's their verdict. But it's just me. It's just me in a different story, you know. And so asking me to pick my favorite is like, what's your favorite, finger, or what's your favorite toe?
Well, why do you
I'm like,
think
I
I
like all of
asked?
them. Thank you, And they're all in here. They kind of live in my head, So
Right,
it's like if I'm like
right.
Sebastian, then Tomo was gonna be like, oh, okay, cool. I don't need that headache. So, I don't know. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Sebastian, of course.
Well, see, you make it sound so easy.
I think for a lot of people in here, that would be an easy one.
I mean, he'd be my favorite too. I mean, because he's hot. What are you gonna do? I'm like, he's hot and he has to do whatever I say.
Thank you very much.
It's like the perfect man.
Okay, it's still working.
Hi there.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How would you say your experience voicing Kyoya went? Like how was it for you?
It was such a game changer for me because I'd been in the business for just a few years when that show came down the pike, and I got the part, and I was really interested in the part because I knew the show. I'd worked on it as a time coder, which is kind of a technical thing. I have to create a template for the adaptive writer, so you have to watch episodes and kind of count the frame rates and stuff like that. And so I got to know the show, and I was like, what a fascinating show. What a fascinating character this Kyoya fellow is. And so I really fell in love with him and with the show, and so it was really nerve-wracking to audition for something you really want, because 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get it, so it's heartbreaking. But I was like, I really want this, and my audition was awful. I cannot stress enough how awful my audition was, and yet I somehow still got it because Caitlin Glass is an angel, and she just heard something in my voice that no one else did, and she was like, do you want to be Kyoya? And I was like, yeah. And it was the first time I'd been in something that was that popular. I'd never, I'd worked on shows that were quite good and that had a very dedicated following, but nothing like that could fill a 3,000-seat arena. When we made the cast announcement, I was like, oh, they like the show. Oh, they like the show. It was very, very weird. And I think I told this story yesterday, but so forgive me if I'm repeating myself for those of you that were there, but we premiered the first 3 or 4 dubbed episodes at a convention, and I hadn't even seen the finished product yet. I'd only had recorded my part, and so I was like, oh, I hope it's good. And full house. In fact, they kept having to change rooms because it kept, they kept filling to capacity. And so like, well, let's just change it. Let's move it to the bigger main stage and the other stage. And finally, it was just this full room of hundreds and hundreds of people. I'd never been in a room that size for this. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was like me and Mike McFarlane and Greg Ayers were on stage together to kind of represent the show and to take questions after the screening. And first question was, this guy got up and he was dressed in this really awesome samurai cosplay, and he looked so severe, and he was like, it's actually not so much a question as it a comment for Mr. Tatum. And I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Because I was so small time in those days, I'd never really gotten a lot of hate either, because no one knew who I was. It was bliss. And he stood up and he was like, and he said something to the effect of like, when I heard you were going to be playing Kyoya, I was not impressed. Oh. And I was like, and I want to be like, me neither. Sorry. But instead he was like, but now that I've seen these episodes, and then he bowed. And I was like, oh, you could hear the entire audience be like, whew. And I was like, my heart just like, oh, thank God, okay, they love me, they really love me. And he was super cool. He came to my table later that day and he was like, oh my God, you were so good. Now that he was out of character, he was like, I loved you in the show. And I was like, you. That scared the shit out of me. So it was a game changer. That's when I had my first real interaction with fans who, Greg Ayers told me, he's like, man, this is one of those things you're going to be in that people will talk about 20 years from now. I'm like, no, they won't. And he was right. So, thank you, my dear. It's a lovely question.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, Bakugo. That's the calmest Bakugo I've ever seen in my life. You're like, hi.
Hi. I was Undertaker yesterday, so of course I have to ask about Black Butler. So, with voicing Sebastian, what aspects did you really enjoy about it? Whether that's with his character or the show or, everything in general.
That's lovely. Oh, I love questions like this. My favorite thing about voicing Sebastian, because I'd never done something like this before for voiceover, was the way I approached it. And again, this is not canonical, but this is just how me, my little acting self, creatively finds his way into the role. I look at Sebastian as a projection of CL's unconscious. That he is a demon, but the form he's taking, the Sebastian we know and love, is CL's creation in a sense. And so I based my performance almost entirely off of Brina's take on CL. And because we knew each other so well, we would talk about it, like how do you think CL functions? And so it's clear to me that Sebastian is sort of a stand-in for his father, even looks like him. And so it's like I'm a demon. I'm playing a demon that's playing a character for this other character so that he can eat. It's camouflage so we can have dinner, basically. And it was really interesting because I almost always asked to be recorded after Brina was recorded so I could play off of her performance, which is lovely. I'm a Meisner guy. Meisner is a particular technique, but it involves really, being outward directed toward the person you're in the scene with. And that's very helpful if the person's already recorded. So getting to hear Brina and be like, oh, that's an interesting choice. Cool, I'll hone in on that choice and try to mirror it. Sebastian's very much a reflective person, but in the negative sense. So whereas CL will get really bitchy and very upset, Sebastian gets calmer, goes further in the other direction. And whereas, CL's voice is sometimes very staccato and very angry all the time, Sebastian is very flowy and there's very few pauses. It's all a choice to kind of be the inversion of what CL is presenting, and it's super cool to work like that. That was my favorite thing about working on that show. So,
okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. So, when you get cast in a show like, we'll say Attack on Titan, for example, that has multiple seasons, do you ever look to the next season's subversion of your character to see how can I act in this scene, or how can I do a scene? And I guess another way to ask this is when you see what happens to your character when they die, do you dread coming up to it?
I have such a good story for this. So I used to do this all the time. I'd get cast in a role and I'd read everything I could on it. I'd find all the manga. If I could get the episodes ahead of time to watch, I would. It wasn't always easy. But I was obsessed. And I've learned as I've gotten older that I actually work a lot better the less I know. Because it's, the director is always going to have very different ideas than I do as an actor. And so the less I come into a session with, the less a director is going to have to direct me out of my own bad ideas. So I kind of come in now as a blank slate and let myself be surprised by what's happening. And it actually works very well for me because you can get a very genuine reaction. I'm like, oh, the character is experiencing this for the first time, and so am I. So it works really well, especially with the way we have to record it. We don't get the scripts ahead of time. It's not how it works. There's just no way to do it. And too many NDAs, too many clearances would have to be done. It's just not efficient. So we don't really know unless we've done some research ahead of time on our own, we don't necessarily know what we're getting into. Now, having said that, I worked on Attack on Titan as an adaptive writer, so I had to read the manga and follow it closely so I could do my job as a writer. Because what works for me as an actor does not work for a writer. And I knew what was coming. Spoilers, he dies. What? Someone dies in Attack on Titan? Go away. And I knew it was going to happen. And I love Commander Erwin with all my heart. He is one of my favorite characters I have ever played. Probably the least like me as well. And I romanticize him completely in the sense that I'm like, God, if he was a real guy, I would follow him into battle. Maybe not now, but until that last scene. And I knew it was coming because I'd read ahead in the manga. I did not write season 3. That was Aaron Dismuke, who was doing just a bang-up job. And he wrote that final speech. And sorry, I get kind of emotional talking about it. But so I know I'm a mess. So Mike McFarlane, the Dubs director, has been one of my best friends for years and years and years. And, you know, he's very military when he directs Attack on Titan. He adjusts his style according to the show he's on. And with Attack on Titan, especially with Erwin, he's very much like, you may picture like, you know, me being up there and saying something and Mike being like, oh, beautiful, perfect. Let's come in for another take and try that. It doesn't work like that. He's like, no, let's do one more and this time better. You know, and we could talk to each other like that because we're friends. So I would come in, and I knew on season 3, I didn't know what recording session it was going to be, but I knew at some point in this season I am going to die. It put me in a perfect frame of mind for playing the character because that's always going to be in the back of his mind, is today the day? Is today the day? Because at some point it's going to be. And so I went in every day. Every week.
That's amazing.
I went in every week and I'd be like, hey, is today the day? And Mike be like, no, what's wrong with you? Get in the booth, you pussy. and I'd be like, yes, sir. You know, what are we doing? I'm like, oh, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Attack on Titan, don't die, blah, 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 blah. And not the last day, but the day I went in, Mike was like, hey, how you doing today, buddy? And I was like,
oh.
Fuck. And we went in, we got it in a pass, that last speech in one pass, and I was crying, Mike was crying, and we went out, we hugged, and we're like...
At least he died before it got really bad.
I haven't watched a single episode since he died. I know, you may laugh, and that may sound because I'm salty. I'm like, I'm not going to watch, because no, it's not that at all. It's because I'm so connected to him. I don't feel right knowing things he didn't get to know. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't make it to the basement either.
That's actually respectable. I appreciate that.
Thank you for that question. That was lovely. I know everyone's like, oh, he died. That's so cute. You monsters. Hello, love your cosplay.
Thank you. First thing, would you like a rose?
I would love a rose. Mine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's blue too. I love it. Thank you.
And my question, my question is.
It's gonna fall, but I'm gonna try to be like, go on.
What do you think would happen if Ida and Kyoya ended up working together in some capacity, like either like a group project or like a business meeting, something like just
Oh my God.
What would that interaction be like?
The only thing I can picture is, no, that's not going to work. The only thing I can picture is like Tenya being Kyoya's bodyguard. Like part of the Otori, like military force that they just have. Yeah, and he'd be like the most extra one that's always like, fire in the hole! And like, is like, putting himself bodily onto Kyoya when like, there's just a sound coming from the next room and Kyoya's gonna be like, will you get off me, please? Don't speak, they'll find you! That's how that would go. Oh my God, that would be delicious.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for my lovely blue rose.
So I also have a rose if you want it.
It's like I've just gotten off the plane in Hawaii. Thank you. Thank you, love. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I wanted to know, what was your favorite scene between Tamaki and Kyoya?
My favorite scene is the flashback episode. The whole episode really is great, but that moment where Tamaki is just like, maybe I'll just open up an animal kingdom in the north, and he's like, shut up! It's like when we see Kyoya get mad for the first time, it's such a beautiful and validating moment, and I love that. It was wonderful too, because Caitlin Glass, who also plays Haruhi, she was the show's dub director. And we make this joke. She just eats, sleeps, breathes that show, especially in those years. And like we had this running joke that like if you go into your bathroom like late at night, at like after midnight, and say like Oron 3 times, she will appear in the mirror behind you. But she loved that scene. Kyoya was one of her favorite characters, which put a lot of pressure on me to not screw it up. But she was delightful, and when we did that scene, it was the first time that we had to discover Kyoya's anger, because he doesn't get angry. I mean, he gets kind of comically frustrated in the mall episode, but not like emotionally, like, you don't know what you're talking about, which was really, I'm a very physical actor in the booth, so I have to watch myself because I have to stay on mic and also not take out the mic, which I have done before. And so I'm there and I'm like grabbing like Tamaki's imaginary lapels in front of me and being like, all you have to do is try, that whole line. And when I'm done with the take, I'm just like, okay. And I turn, and Caitlin's in the glass, outside on the other side of the glass, being like, and I'm like, did I do good, Mom? But that's one of my favorite scenes in that whole show, because we get to see a side of, we get to understand why he puts up with Tom McKee's BS.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Love your cosplay as well, my dude. Hello.
Hi. Are you okay? I'm a little short. First off, Ouran is my favorite anime of all time, so thank you.
It's
I
such
think
a great
I'm
show.
in good company. But to speak to one of your other characters, how does it feel, the reaction given to Given, since I know you do Ugetsu?
It's such a beautiful show. And for those of you that haven't seen Given, it deals with gay issues, with LGBTQ plus community issues, and it's one of the most real and beautifully rendered shows I've ever seen, both the original Japanese, and I think the dub is one of the best damn things I've ever seen. And I'm not in it much. I only have a handful of lines, and then I have a nice little moment in the movie, which is one of my favorites. But getting to hear my husband, who I think is a brilliant actor, sink his teeth into a role that really spoke to him, because he really, really relates to that character so much. I love Greeley too. Greeley, all the core cast, everyone is great, but that core cast is amazing. And David Wald, the show's director, is big, beautiful gay man. I love him. He's my backup husband. And Brandon knows this, it's just understood. He plays Wainwright in the Borderlands franchise, so we are married in the Borderlands universe. And he's lovely. What's not to love about Wainwright? And David Wald has fought for years to recognize the LGBT community in the dubbing community, to make sure that LGBTQ plus actors get work and that get recognized, and that kind of content gets shopped over here from the Japanese and licensed for dubs. And when Given came down the pike, that beautiful bastard fought tooth and nail to direct it and to adapt the dub scripts along with Marissa Lenti, who did a great job. And it finally happened. He fought to get it done, but he had complete control over it, because he's like, I know this story, I know these people, and I know how it needs to be told. And it was so validating to see it come to life and then watch it. And we binged it with some friends of ours that loved it, and they weren't in it, sadly. They weren't given the chance, but they were in love with the show anyway, and so we sat down and watched it over the course of a few weeks. And then when the movie came out, and it was just wonderful watching it with our friends, and they just forget that that's us, you know, in the movie, and it's just great. It's super validating. As I have to understand, I'm 47 years old, and when I came out, it was the 90s in North Texas. It was not an easy life. Now, I was luckier than most, and that I had a very supportive family. But that wasn't always the case. My family wasn't always supportive. There are other family members from previous generations that were not so lucky, and they paid a very, very stiff price for the lack of support. And so my family learned how to be supportive the hard way. And that's all I'll say about that. But, you know, if you'd have told me when I was first starting out as an actor, for whom theater was a great community to be gay, because that was a great place to find your family. If you'd have told me that I would one day see that anime, this little genre, not even a genre, but we used to think of it as terms of Japanimation, it used to be called back in the days. If you'd have told me that would be where some of the best, most representative works I've ever seen would come from, and that I would get to be some part of it, I wouldn't have known how to believe you, because I wouldn't think it would possible based on the world I was living in at the time. So my favorite thing about Given is how surprising it is that it even exists and that it got to exist. So thank you for watching it as much as you love it, and thank you. But knowing that you get to see it, it just means the fucking world to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Why are you doing this to me on a Sunday? Somebody throw a pie. Hi there.
Hello. So my question is, what was it like coming back and voicing Okabe after the long time gap between Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero?
Really hard. Really hard. I didn't want to do it. I almost didn't. Yeah, there's a story there. So I got to work on the original dub, both as an adaptive writer with my good friend Patrick Seitz, and as the lead. And I did not cast myself in the lead. I would never have done that. Y'all, if you ever get in this business and you're a writer and an actor, do never, ever, ever, ever agree to write the show that you're the lead in or be the lead in a show that you're the lead writer in. It's hell on earth, because if something doesn't work, it's your fault. No matter what. You can be the actor and be like, oh, who wrote this shit? Oh, fuck me. You know, we're like, oh, who's mangling my words? I'm mangling my words. There's literally no one else to blame but me. And it was really stressful, and it cost me a relationship at the time. As great as that show is, and it's one of my proudest moments as an actor to get to be in that, because it's just a flawless show. It's just a great show originally, and I think the dub is one of the best dubs I've ever gotten to be part of, because the entire cast is great. The scripts I'm very proud of, and I think Patrick's work as a writer is just unmatched. And it was wonderful, and there were always rumors of another season coming down the wire. But that show cost me so much emotionally, and I don't mean to oversell it and sound really dramatic, but there is a scene where Okabe is having a mental breakdown, and that's actually just me having a mental breakdown in the booth. Yeah, because I just lost my shit. I just had a day, and it was like I couldn't get away from the show. I'd lost Michael. I didn't know where Michael was anymore. I was just Okabe all the time, and it sounds ridiculous, but because I'd never gotten in that deep before. Voice acting was never had given me the opportunity to, and this was such a real show and such an extensive character that I had to record just about every other day and then write for as well, that I just couldn't get away from it. And I was like, my life is spinning out of control. And because it's about time travel, and he's visiting all these scenes, and you have to understand that, like, I'm visiting these scenes multiple times too, as a writer, then as an actor, and then again as an actor and a writer when the scene comes back, and I'm like, I don't know what world line I'm in. I mean, I was losing my fucking mind. Pardon my French. It's now a PG-13 panel. But, you know, and so there's a scene where you know it. It's when he's in the back of the car and he's begging Moeke not to do it, to do that thing, and that's horrible, and it happens anyway, and he just becomes unglued, and he calls himself a piece of shit, basically. It's the first time we see him ever drop the arrogance and be like, look, I'm nothing, please just don't kill my friend. And it doesn't work, and it's devastating, and I lost my mind. I was literally crying. I made fun of it the other day when I was asked this question, but it was like literally, you may picture like this beautiful cinematic cry. It was stupid, ugly, 4-year-old kid just being in trouble, grounded. We're like, you're in your room going, nobody loves me. You know, it was that, and Colleen was like, are you okay? I'm like, And then, you know, so we took a little break, and I came back, and she's like, that was a beautiful scene. We have some choices to make. If you want to do it again to have a little more control, I'm down, but if you are cool with everyone knowing what you sound like having a mental breakdown, we can use what you gave us. And I'm like, I don't want to do it again. And so it's out there now. So all that is to say, 7 years later, when they're like, hey, more Steins Gate, fun, right? I was like, oh, shit. And it was really rough. There was also some things going on. My relationship with the studio at the time was not the best because of some choices they were making and that I was making, that we were kind of going in opposite directions. And they wanted me to reprise the role, and I was like, as much as I love it, I don't think I can do it. I just don't think I have the energy anymore, and I don't agree with some of the decisions the studio was making with regards to some other things that I won't go into. It's all water under the bridge now, but at the time it was kind of devastating, and so I was like, I don't think I want to reprise it, and I kind of tried not to. And then the director, who was a good friend of mine, was like, please give it another go. There's no one else, and I really want to work with you, because he had been the engineer on the original one, and now he was the director, and he's like, this is my dream. And I'm like, fuck, I can't do that to you, okay. And then I sat down for a week, and I watched the original through it was the first time I'd done it. It's the first time I'd ever seen that scene, because I can't watch it. And I watched it, and I was like, And then I get to, my favorite performance, incidentally, in a show of beautiful performances is Suzuha. I love her character, and I think Cherami is magnificent. I mean, she's just perfect. Everyone is. But there's that moment, and they're in the time machine, and and she's going back, and it's her last line in the show, and she says, see you in 7 years. And I'm like, those motherfuckers. They knew exactly what they were doing, because it's like 7 years to the date of that episode is when the new was slated to premiere, and I was like, I have to do it. So I came back and I did Steins Gate 0. And I hope they wait another 7 years if there's ever a Steins Gate -1. But thank you. I didn't mean to take us down that road, but thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm sorry for all my salty language.
All right, we only have a couple of more minutes left, so we're going to try and get through what we can, or it might just be one question. We'll just see what happens.
I'm sorry. I'll be at my table for the rest of the day, too, so if you want to come ask me questions there, you can do it there, too. Okay, sorry. I'll be really quick.
I have a little thing for you.
A little thing? A little thing for me? Oh, it's so cute. I love it.
I draw on literally everything.
If it was going to be a white rose, I was going to lose my mind. This is so cute. Thank you. Oh, my God. All the gifts. You guys are so lovely.
My question is, what would an interaction between Sebastian and Kyoya look like?
Sebastian, I order you to shut Tamaki up. Done. That's a good one. Thank you. Yes.
Hi. I'll try to keep this quick. I just spent the last few months working on an updated retranslation of the first bits of Oron. And in doing that, I kind of learned a lot about not just, the story, but also queer representation and the way that that was translated in the early 2000s. And so I guess my question for you is, as anime has evolved and as, queer community has evolved, as a queer writer and director and actor in anime, how do you grapple with that evolution, and how do you grapple with writing and translating that stuff?
God, that's such a big question. I'm still coming to terms with it, I will tell you, I've always been a gay actor, and as a voice actor, I've always been very open about being a gay actor. So, for example, when I played Kyoya, it may not have been known until later when people asked me, but to me, he's gay, and I play him as gay. Now,
correct.
I hasten to add, that's not canonical. That may not be what the original creator had in mind, and that's fine. We're allowed to be different of opinion. They may have a different, characters like that are so big and wonderful that they almost fit in any context because they're so well written. So I'm like, cool, I can play him as gay. There's room to play him as gay, and I did, and it seemed to work. You seemed to like it. So, surprise, you liked a gay guy. But I mean, it's clear to me that's at least a motivating factor, that he is not heterosexual. And it's kind of, I don't know that I grapple with it because I've always kind of dealt with it. It's just part of like being who I am, of knowing that identifying this way means that sometimes I have to fight. Just for the right to not have to put it front and center, because I hate, my struggle has always been with, because this side of myself that I don't feel is that important or shouldn't be in the grand scheme of things. In a perfect world, it would be no more important than my eye color or the size of my shoe. But I had to, as a young man, put that front and center and sometimes let other aspects of my personality atrophy because other people hated that about me. And so I had to make it my whole personality in order to fight, just to survive. And I don't know that it's gotten any easier. But at least there are, the way that what helps me is seeing that it seems that we're making progress. And yes, there's still fights to be had, because the more progress you make, the more the other side doubles down, and it's just how things work, and I hate it, but there it is. But it's nice to know that there are younger people now grappling with what I grappled with as a young man, that now have things out there. They now do have role models that they don't have to make up themselves. And that gives me some hope. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, it looks like we are out of time, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry, I talk too much.
But you can always go down to his table and ask him questions.
But I will be at my table until, for the rest of the day, pretty much. So thank you guys so much. You guys are so wonderful.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your con. Tomorrow it'll all have been a dream.